So now that you've begun to really see the truth of the matter of who are your functioning lords in the priority audit that you began last lesson, we talked about functional lordship. Now we're going to be talking about undercover lords. Okay. The second question that we have that we're going to be looking at is what is competing for rule inside of your life? And sometimes this is so quiet. It's a quiet protest of rulership. The first goal of the bride's university and the bride's way of you walking the bride's way and being conformed into the bride is this: to prioritize the bridegroom in your schedule and your habits. And that first step is to complete your priority audit. Okay. And so your priority audit is going to help you. And this is one of the things that is going to help you to prioritize the bridegroom in your schedule and your habits. And so already we know about the law at work here. We're talking about the law of lordship. What you consistently prioritize becomes your Lord, your authority, and what you obey. And this helps you to see the rival authorities that are actually already operating in your life under this law. And oftentimes they're without being named. Like they're just quietly operating undercover, don't even know. Okay, so these are the principle of undercover lords. Okay, most women do not realize that not everything that rules you will look sinful. So sometimes you can have these undercover lords that are ruling your life, and because they're so covert and they're not sinful, you don't even recognize that they are Lord. Okay, and so many rival authorities don't show up with like a picket sign and say, I hate Jesus. They show up like, hey, this is necessary, this is why this must happen. And we need to name them, because if we don't recognize that these things are having functional lordship by being covert and undercover, and because they're not sinful, they don't stand out to us, we will continue to have these other functional lords and still wonder and question, why isn't Jesus closer? Why don't I feel like he's closer? I say he's my Lord, but there's just this friction that I can't put words to it. And it is this undercover lords. The definition here is when rival authorities govern your life quietly by disguising themselves as reasonable needs, responsibilities, or coping strategies. Okay, so that looks like comfort, productivity, fear. It could look like control or urgency or approval. And they often rule your decisions without being consciously recognized as lords. And this matters because, the truth of the matter is you're most likely not rebellious, right? You want the Lord. You're not trying to rebel against him. You actually want to allow him to rule over you, to allow him to have his way in your life. But the thing about these undercover lords is that they feel necessary for survival. They feel necessary for your stability, necessary for your responsibilities. But the truth of the matter is that no, they are not. The only one that is only absolutely necessary as your Lord, as everything that you need for life, is Jesus. And so the principle of undercover lords actually helps you to replace what feels like an accusation with clarity. Okay. And so, I think that the undercover lords principle is so vital because it is the one that goes so unseen. So unseen. And so the concept now that we're going to be talking about is the divided self, which I mentioned briefly in the last lesson, right? And so this is why we can feel like, again, this divided self, where half of us, like, we really, really love Jesus, but then we feel this tension. It's like, why I want to follow him. Why do I feel like I don't want to follow him? Why do I feel so exhausted, or I feel like this inner resistance? And sometimes it's the flesh. Sometimes it's also just this divided self of, oh, I didn't know I had these other lords here. So it's not you, it's these other covert authorities that you have, that you've been listening to, that you've been submitting to, that you didn't even know that you were. And this is where you recognize, oh, I have competing alliances. I have, quote unquote, two masters. And I'm trying to please this master over here, who's Jesus. But really, I'm serving this master over here, which is my comfort, or which is my responsibilities, or it's my wisdom. I'm serving this master, and this is why I feel this friction, because I'm trying to serve two masters and I can't. That is impossible. I cannot do that. And so not all lords look sinful. Like I said, they show up as responsibility, urgency, wisdom. It's wise for me to do this. Of course, God wouldn't want me to do this. Oh yeah? Oh yeah? I have I have not come across undercover lords in my life. I mean, I'm not saying I haven't had undercover lords. I don't mean to say that. What I mean by that, there are situations in my life where I had to go against these undercover lords that were trying to slip in. I have one, wisdom. I'll share a story if you haven't heard this story before. So back in 2020, um, just financially, and in previous to this, we were doing pretty bad. So we were living with a lot of family members in a small house. I wanted to have our own house, and COVID was happening at this time. And so I was on this prayer line, and on this prayer line, they talked about asking God for something that you can believe. And I'm like, I want my own house. This is May 2020. I said, Lord, please give us a house. I gave him the specs, and when I needed it by, I needed it in 3 months. I needed it by August 2020. Well, the Lord said yes. Okay. The way that I know he said yes, it's just, I just felt like this inner warmth. And I'm like, I know he didn't, like, I didn't hear yes, I didn't, but I felt this warmth. And I took that as he said yes. About maybe a week later, I tell my husband, and he's just kind of like, oh, okay, because I'm not one, again, to tell him this is what God said or what have you, because all the times that I did it earlier years, probably 9 years prior, 8 years prior, nothing ever came of it. And so I never said God said anything. And so all that to say, probably, a couple more days later, the Lord reminds me and he says, you need to talk to D because time's going, and if you want this house, like you're gonna need some time to find it and all that stuff. So all that to say that I went to my husband. I said, "Hey, the Lord reminded me that I told you, but we're not making any moves, and He did say He would give us a house." So my husband said, "Okay, we'll talk about it." So I don't know. A couple days later, let's say we're talking, and my husband starts to question me, and he says, well, if God really did say, I don't have a problem, but are you sure God really did say? Because at this point in time, your mom is saying that she'll get a place for us, where we can all live together. But if God didn't say, and she doesn't get enough space for us, then we're going to be homeless. At this time, we had a 1 and a 3-year-old. And I'm like, okay, you're right. Like, this is big stakes. Like, you are so right. This is big stakes. And so I started doubting the Lord. And that's not what my husband wanted from me. He didn't want me to doubt God. He just wanted me to be sure. So I started to doubt the Lord, and he just came through, and he had someone message me who I don't know, and she delivered a prophetic word in the middle of my husband and I's conversation when I began to doubt the Lord. And the Lord said to me, do not be like the waves that toss to and fro. Whatever he promises, he will do. And I remember I held up my phone. I said, D, look at this. Look at the time. It was like 2 minutes. I said, we were just in this conversation. Look what happened. And he read it, and he was like, okay, clearly God did say. So all that to say, the Lord showed me how the devil will try to use other people in our lives to try and get us to doubt God. And he was almost successful. Like, I started to listen to the wisdom of my husband because pressures started to come in. We only had about 2.5 months now at this point in time. Did God really say this? Yes or no? Because if he didn't and I'm wrong, then we're homeless. Can I really believe God? And so these undercover lords try to get into our lives. And again, they look like wisdom, they look like care for others, they look like survival and all of these things. And that's why they remain hidden. The undercover lords do not say don't follow Jesus. They just say not right now, or maybe you'll do it later, or you can just do it later, or like this matters more in this moment. Like, don't do that right now. This, and it's reason, it's common logic, it's man-made wisdom, human wisdom. Okay. And so the undercover lords is one of those things that is so easy. They're so covert and so sly. Okay. Like Satan in the garden when he says, well, did God really say this? Or yeah, maybe you shouldn't, because what if they say this? Or what if other people think you're weird? Or what if you lose your job? You don't really want to lose your job, right? So many crazy things. Okay. So some of the most common undercover lords, they speak things like this, and here are just some examples. I won't read it, but like, you can go ahead and read it now or look at it in the notes. But they look like again, me-centered, me. Well, what if this? What if that? And again, it's not so much as that it's about you. These undercover lords, it's the devil just trying to get you to think about yourself, to think about you and what you want. And the flesh is just right there, like, yes, of course we agree. And the Holy Spirit's like, no, this is the way, walk in it. And so these undercover lords do not appear sinful. And that's what makes them so covert, because they don't look like sin. They look like, hey, I'm just trying to protect you. I'm just trying to do what's right. I'm just trying to make sure that, you don't end up homeless, or I'm just trying to make sure that you don't X, Y, and Z or lose your job or whatever. And so in Matthew 6:24, again, Jesus says you cannot serve two masters. You cannot have divided loyalty. He doesn't say try to balance these things harder. He says coexistence is impossible. You cannot try to please this and please that. James 1:8 says a double-minded man is unstable in all of his ways. And that's because you have a divided rule. That's why you are unstable, because you're trying to obey this one and obey that one and do this. And so you don't know what to go or where you're going, if you're coming, if you're going. Jesus knows what you don't see yet. He knows that anything that governs you, that has your obedience over him, will exhaust you. It will shame you. And he doesn't want that. It will fracture the intimacy that you want to have with him and that he wants to have with you. He doesn't want that. He wants to relieve you. He wants to lighten your burden and your load and give his yoke and his burden. That's what he wants, which is easy and light. That's what he wants. He wants you to come and learn from him. He wants you to come and live with him. He wants you to come and be with him so that you know his ways are always better. And so how does the bridegroom form this bridal relationship with you? He wants you to know that urgency should not dictate how you go, what you do. That's not. You cannot experience rest with him if urgency is often the thing that is causing you to do what you do. Only he can cause you to do what you do. Okay, if fear dictates your decision, then it's not him. If responsibility dictates your availability, like, Lord, I'm too busy to be with you because I have to do X, Y, and Z, how can you experience rest with him? You cannot experience resting in him. Okay, he's not asking for your emotional affection. Yeah, sure, you can love Jesus with your heart, but again, he says, if you really love me, then obey me. Show me that you love me by how you live your life. Demonstrate your love for me. Isn't that what God does? God demonstrates his love by giving Christ to us and for us, even while we were sinners, as Romans 5:8. God so loved the world that he gave. He demonstrates his love by sacrificing his son. Jesus demonstrates his love by sacrificing his life. We must also follow in the footsteps of Jesus, of God, in which we have to demonstrate our love. Love is demonstrative. It's not solely in words only. Okay? You have to know that. When it comes to bridal formation, this lesson, I'm praying that it's helping you to develop honesty without judgment, to just be aware of the hidden rule of the undercover, covert lords. Okay, because surrender can still remain vague if you don't recognize that there are undercover lords that are here just trying to take lordship away from the Lord, to get you to stop obeying him, to get you to continue to live in distance from him, and that's not what you want. And so I just think about in Genesis 31, where Rachel, she leaves her household with her father, she leaves her father's household with Jacob, and she takes a household idol. And it's like, that was covert. Jacob didn't even know that she took the idol. As far as the scriptures are concerned, she secretly carried that idol. And there's so many women who want to follow Jesus so much with their heart, but they're secretly carrying, whether they know it or not, they're carrying these covert undercover lords. Okay, and so you may have believed that that certain things are a part of your life. It's not about lordship, or you can't afford to let this go. You can't afford to do this yet. You can't afford to let go of this job, even though you feel like you have to quit. How will your bills get paid? You can't afford to do this, right? Jesus understands why I have to do this first. He would want me to take care of me. Really? Really? So you think that it's you taking care of you and that God doesn't take care of you? that you think that if you quit your job, then God cannot take care of you, right? This doesn't really affect intimacy. You may think that whatever it is that he's asking you to let go of won't affect your intimacy, but indeed it will, and it does. Or that you have later to deal with it. This is divided rule. That is not devotion. That is not how you show that you are devoted to the Lord. And so the required belief shift that is needed, the old beliefs, is that you may think that your priorities are neutral, that they're not bad for you to prioritize your fitness or your health or your job or your parents or your husband or your kids. But the thing is that anything that governs you over the Lord is never neutral. They are always opposed to him. They are always against him. You may think that responsibility excuses your delay and that's why you can disobey, but no, responsibility never outranks lordship. And you may think, oh, I need these things to function. Why would God tell me to not do that? I don't think that he would do that. But Jesus is the only one who sustains your life. You should need nothing else but the Lord. Okay, when it comes to real life embodiment, undercover lords reveal themselves when obedience feels inconvenient, when surrender is continually postponed. One time is not, one time even, when surrender is postponed at all, it's because you are obeying another Lord. Because if he's truly Lord, then you would obey him. But there's something else stopping you that's not allowing you to go, and that is an undercover Lord. When your intimacy feels rushed or it's skipped, you have an undercover Lord. And in that, you see the functional Lord. Who is the functional Lord in that situation? And when your peace depends on control, that's a big one. That is a big one. You see, for me, I used to be governed by productivity, by my goals. I got to get up and I got to work. I got to get up and I got to do this. I got to do that. And Jesus was never on my to-do list at all. And in 2020, he showed me that. Like, I felt so justified for probably 4 months, the last 4 months of 2019. I used to get up from 4 a.m. and I used to work from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. I used to just be so dedicated to my business at the time. And in the new year, January 2020, after I said, okay, I want Jesus to be first, guess what's the first thing he told me? One of the first things he told me was, you seem very dedicated to your business. If I'm really first, then why don't you dedicate those hours to me? And I thought that was the most craziest things because, the craziest thing because I wanted to do business. Like, that's the reason why I woke up, so I can get ahead on my business. But no, he made it clear that if I wanted him to be first, that looked like taking action. That looked like truly putting him first. Okay, and that's how I did the changes that I did to really see, okay, who really is my Lord? Do I really mean it when I say I want Jesus to be first? Is that what I really mean? And so many things changed in my life to really make him truly my Lord. For all of the years before, prior to, my intimacy suffered because I was not putting him first. He was last on my list. And honestly, he wasn't a priority at all. But freedom came when I finally saw what was ruling me, and he showed me that who was truly the ruler of my life. And the consequences of not allowing the undercover lords to be uncovered is that surrender stays theoretical. It's just something that's in your mind. Your obedience, you try to negotiate it. You're always negotiating your obedience, and intimacy will always remain inconsistent. And it's not because you don't love Jesus, it's because he's not the only authority that you respond to. And so because he's not, then truly he's not Lord, and other things are Lord in your life. And so here is your response invitation to complete the priority audit. You're invited to notice, what do you obey when you're underneath pressure, and name what gets first access to you, and observe what protects you from disruption, and recognize what actually determines how fast you move, when you slow down, when you go faster, what's actually controlling you. Is it Jesus or is it other things in your life?